Welcome to Kindly Neurodivergent with Kay. Before we start, a quick note. This episode is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And if you notice pauses in our conversation, that's intentional. That's part of how we talk. Today I have Laura Tompkins with me. She will be discussing the speller's method. Laura is a 21-year-old non-speaker who lives in Oceanside, California with her parents and sister. She has been spelling to communicate for 5 years, and her goal is to become an advocate for other non-speakers. She is currently enrolled in Maricosta College, where she is studying communications and sociology. Welcome, Laura and Val.
Thank you so much for having us. Nice to meet you. Go ahead.
Good to see you. Val, how did you know that she wanted to comment?
If I hold the keyboard in front of her, if she has something to say, she'll type, or she'll just tell me that she doesn't have anything to say at that moment.
Why did you choose this as your communication method? Prior to finding spelling, my parents tried everything from sign language to AAC, but nothing worked because apraxia kept me from using them effectively.
Okay. Yeah. So since she was diagnosed a little before the age of 2, we did PECs and we did AAC devices, American Sign Language, but a lot of those involve some fine motor skills where she has some struggles. Yes, you know. And they also, the apraxia would keep her from pointing to the right icons or the right PECs pictures. So it was very frustrating. In addition to not working, it was also very frustrating for her, which we didn't know at the time. But we had not heard of spelling until she was 16.
Modified signs did not work.
Right, right. And it's so funny because when we first saw the letterboards, I thought, how could it be that easy just to have these letters on a stencil, so seemingly low tech? But since we had tried everything else, like you said, the modified science hadn't worked, so we were like, we'll give this a try. We have nothing to lose.
Copy.
Please explain the difference.
So the difference, so what spelling does is, like I said before, the fine motor skills get taken out of the equation temporarily. So you start by pointing to letters on a letterboard, which comes from the gross motor of the shoulder, and her gross motor skills are much stronger than her fine motor skills. So she's actually just one letter at a time poking out her answers or her thoughts until you get to the keyboard, and then the fine motor comes back in. But we spent years on the stencils refining those gross motor skills so that she could practice them over and over to be able to be ready for the keyboard when she did transition to the keyboard. So it was that bypassing of the fine motor that was key for her to be able to get her thoughts out.
I use word prediction.
Great. Yeah. We haven't used that. We actually took it off of her iPad. It's just, whatever works for the individual is the best thing.
Occupational therapy.
Yes, so she has done occupational therapy since she was very small, with different degrees of success. And I'm going to let you comment on this as well. But it really depends on the person and the methodology they use. But what would you say was successful when you had OT? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Keep going.
Presuming competence.
Presuming competence. So when the OT talked to her at an age level that was appropriate and presumed she understood everything she was being told, then the OT would actually work. But she has explained to me that some of her early on occupational therapists didn't think she understood. So they would baby talk to her and they would talk down to her and they would repeat themselves when they didn't need to. And what that did, according to what Laura has told me, is then it made it doubly, triply hard for her body to cooperate because she was adding on this anxiety of being talked to like a toddler, in addition to not being able to get her body to cooperate. So it really depended on the individual doing the occupational therapy. Is that appropriately, did I miss anything?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. You can take a little break and go to
How do you type during emergencies or emotional times?
That's a hard one, and you can see she's taking a little regulation break now. What we've found is it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to type in those moments, and I'm sure you can understand that. So a lot of times, if there's a period of anxiety, we can't get to the root of what's causing that in the moment, but the next evening or the next day or a couple hours later, we can back up and I can find out what was going on in that moment. But it is, it's a very good question you ask, because in that moment when she's having a lot of anxiety, it's almost always impossible to type what's going on. But the great thing is that later on we can get to the root of the problem and see if there's a solution we can put in place to avoid it happening again.
What happens during a medical emergency where pain details are needed?
Yeah, so she's, knock on wood, she's had very few medical emergencies. She's been very, very healthy. Before communication, obviously, there was nothing we could do but guess. And I remember being in the ER at the doctor's office just saying, something's wrong, I don't know what it is, and she couldn't get anything out. Since she's been an open speller, it's been amazing. Like I said, thankfully no emergencies, but little things that seem so commonplace to us, like headaches or toothaches, couldn't tell us about before. Now she can say, you know what, I really have this pain in my upper left tooth, and we can immediately get to a solution instead of having her suffer needlessly while we guessed. So it's made all the difference in pain relief and identifying when something's going on, or even if she's just a little off or tired. Again, things that seem very small to most of us, but they're a big deal. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and before she would just, she would touch an area of her body and we would say, maybe that hurts or maybe it doesn't. And again, with apraxia, she might not even be touching the place that hurt. But now, she can spell it out. That's not what hurts. This is what really does.
What is apraxia?
So apraxia, and Laura, you can chime in if you want. Apraxia, and it's a really good question because when she was diagnosed, it was with autism, and it wasn't that helpful, frankly. But when we understood what apraxia was, which wasn't until she was 16, apraxia is when your brain knows exactly what it's doing, and it gives your body commands, and your body won't execute on those commands, even though there's full understanding, full intent, but the body lacks the capability to follow through on that. So it's a breakdown or a disconnect between the mind and the body that makes it appear, again, like either she didn't know what I asked, or she is being willful, or has behaviors, or is non-compliant, all those terms they used for when her body wouldn't execute on what she wanted. And it turned out she did understand. She wasn't having behaviors. It was just a breakdown in the brain and the body.
When did you realize your body didn't always do what your mind intended?
Past times make me forget how far I've come, so I prefer not to dwell there.
Yeah, so I was very surprised to hear her answer to that question because I thought maybe she would say when I was 2 or 3, but instead I would say she regressed when she was just shy of 2 years old. She lost her language, she lost her eye contact. So we noticed that what we now know was apraxia, which we didn't know then. We noticed it around the age of 2.
How did you know it wasn't stimming?
Oh, well, there was some stimming going on, but the big learning lesson there was her therapist, her ABA therapist, her teachers didn't understand at the time that stimming can be self-regulating, and so they would try to stop that. I'm sure you've heard the term quiet hands or, yeah. And so, but that would just, again, it's one of those ironies that actually would make things worse and more frustrating because the hand flapping or the walking in circles, a lot of the things that she did were to regulate herself, and they were actively trying to stop her from doing that. So there were definitely, and still are, stims as well as the apraxia. But now we know to let her do them because they're bringing her that regulation. Right, Laura? Yeah.
What does she do when she can't take a break?
Ooh, that's a hard one, especially since she just started college, and so there's an expectation to sit in class. So not being able to take a break can lead to a little bit of an anxiety sort of breakdown, if you will. Being able to take a break when your body needs it is crucial for her, just like you're seeing right now.
Like an appointment.
Yeah, exactly. So there are certain situations like an appointment or school where you're expected to be at a certain place at a certain time. And we've had occasions where we've just had to leave places. And at first, when she was much younger, I didn't think of that as a suitable solution. So I made her stick it out, which was probably not the way to go. But when I realized sometimes her body is overstimulated or overwhelmed, the best thing to do is just to, whenever possible, just leave the situation and try again another time.
Like this may look different.
Yes. And in order for her to be able to spell effectively and fluently, she has to be in a calm, regulated state, and so do I. So if we don't take those breaks and if we try to push through too many things at once, then the dysregulation will kick in and the spelling is not possible. So those breaks that you're talking about are so key to making sure that she can stay regulated enough to get those beautiful thoughts out. Because if she's not, then we get into motor loops on the keyboard or she's not able to spell at all. So that regulation is so key to everything we do when we're spelling.
Even though the answers were pre-programmed, she needs a break.
Yes. But what we didn't know is when the answers were pre-programmed in her devices, because she was looping on them and hitting the ones she didn't want to hit, they weren't actually reflecting what she wanted anyway. So they would feed into her dysregulation, the pre-programmed answers. So what we thought was working and looked on the surface like it was working actually wasn't working for her, but we didn't know that until years later when she was able to explain that the pre-programmed options weren't the way to go for her because of the apraxia preventing her from hitting the right keys. Ironic.
What helps your body regulate before spelling?
Blocking in on the opportunity to spell helps me regulate.
And it's again, a little bit of irony. She gets excited to spell, which can look like dysregulation. But so in the beginning, and I've had a lot of parents tell me this, they don't want to spell with me. But what happens is they're so excited at the prospect of spelling that their body can actually look like it's a negative or that it's dysregulated. So she's saying in this answer that if she really tries to zone in on that opportunity, because we're not spelling all day, neither one of us has the regulation to be just spelling all day. So those opportunities are only a few times a day maybe. So she locks in on that chance and tries to calm her body. She also likes, I'll answer for you on this one, Laura, but she also likes just to move her body to get it regulated. She does a lot of walking around the house, just, moving her body just to get it regulated enough to spell.
So how does she make sure homework will get done?
She needs us to do that. So we go to college with her. I go to class with her. She sees the homework, but I have to sit down and do it with her because she needs her keyboard. So we stay on top of that with her, but she's an overachiever and she wants to get her homework done actually earlier than it's actually due. So we haven't had any trouble with that because for so many years she wasn't given an age-appropriate education. So her brain is so hungry for knowledge that she just eats up every minute of it. So you'll be in class and there'll be a lot of students that are like tired and really don't want to be there, but she is just so excited to be there every day.
Will the keyboard ever be down?
Yes, that is the plan. So she can type. We have a stand, this stand here, and we put the keyboard in the stand, and I still sit next to her for regulation purposes, and she can type like this without me holding it. We haven't gotten to the point yet where it's flat. That's the next step, and where it's all 10 fingers typing. So it's a work in progress, but she has said many, many times that her goal is to be able to type independently. So we're working very hard on that, but it's probably one of the toughest transitions in spelling is going to a completely independent typing. In fact, it is the hardest.
Please talk about how long it took to be on keyboard.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I would say is that it's so different by person. And the second thing I would say is it's never a rush, because if you skip the key steps along the way, the keyboard, you're setting yourself up for failure. So the first thing I would say is it's different for everyone. It can take months or many years. For Laura, it was a couple of years that we worked on the stencils and the laminate, and her provider, Dawn Marie, would introduce the keyboard for just a little bit of the session to get her used to it. So she would sort of ease it in, transition it in for just spelling words, and then progress from there. So it did take a couple of years. It could take some people months, or another key is once you have a 26 letter board, I thought I had one here, but once you have a letter board, you can say anything you want. So if it's not your goal to get to the keyboard as a speller, it's not necessary in order to get your thoughts out. And some spellers still prefer the input of poking through the stencil from the gross motor rather than having the fine motor of the keyboard. So it's really important, I think, that it's not a race, that there is no timeline, and it's not even mandatory to get to the keyboard. But that's the beauty of spelling, is they can say whether that's their goal or not. And it's so wonderful after all those years of guessing at what she wanted that now she can just tell us. Things that everybody else takes for granted, or I certainly did with my other children, but now she's able to tell us, hey, yeah, I do want to get to the keyboard and I do want to type independently.
What are you working on during that journey?
Laura, do you want to come and answer that? Yeah? When you're ready, you can. I'll speak for you, but I want you to correct me if I say anything wrong. So the biggest step this year was college. And again, college is not something we ever thought would be in the cards for her. We didn't even think a high school diploma would be in the cards for her. So when she was first an open speller, she wanted to study neuroscience and understand the brain better and apraxia so that she could sort of just get a better, deeper understanding of it. But as time progressed, she decided that she felt more powerfully about being an advocate. And so she decided to sort of change course, and she decided to major in communications and possibly sociology. We don't have to decide yet. We're only 2 classes in, so she doesn't have to declare a major. But that, I would say, is the biggest time that she spends. She also spends quite a bit of time on working out intentional motor activity. She has a personal trainer that she works out with twice a week, and we try to get her out and moving. She wants her body to be strong, so that, that it kind of reinforces the brain-body connection for her. So that's a big priority for her. So I would say college and making sure that her body is healthy, both from a nutritional and movement perspective, are high priority for her right now. And also, folks such as yourself who invite her on podcasts, she really appreciates those opportunities. She's done, I think, 3 podcasts, and she has written a short story that we're looking into getting published. So she's working on all these things just to get the word out. And in her words, if something that she does, like this podcast, reaches just one family on the fence or one family who hasn't heard about spelling, then she says her job is complete. So hopefully it reaches even more. But like she says, she just wants to reach one family because she tries to imagine what her life would be without spelling. And she puts herself in the shoes of other people, and she doesn't want anyone to not have that opportunity. So I'm incredibly proud of her, as you can tell.
What are you working on apraxia-wise during the spelling journey?
Oh, apraxia-wise, that's a tough one. So I would say, Laura, you can probably tell me most what helps you in your spelling journey with the apraxia, because apraxia is a monster, right? And it takes a lot. So how would you answer that question for her? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Keep going. Mm-hmm. Keep going. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay.
Apraxia loves an idle body.
So she said that's going back to the fact that moving her body helps her. And it's not just moving her body, and I didn't really understand this either because, like I said, she spends a lot of time running around the house, but that's not really intentional. And so we joined a gym, what was that, 3 years ago? And I put her on a treadmill. And all of a sudden, your body has to move according to how the treadmill is telling you to move. So it becomes purposeful versus just running around in circles. So when we introduced, I just thought if she's running around, she's getting exercise, but it's not the same. So she does things now like strength training, where it's very deliberate. And, and her trainer will say up 2, 3, down 2, 3, instead of just kind of, moving your arms randomly, right? Yeah, you can go ahead and take a break. Thank you. So I just love the way she says apraxia loves an idle body, because when she's not moving, that movement absolutely strengthens that brain-body connection for her. She's told me that on multiple occasions.
Do you have multiple keyboards?
Yes. So I would say, the laminate boards are in every room, but the keyboards, we have a couple. That's really all you need. What I have for her is a travel keyboard, so that when we're out and about, this is the one she takes to college, and it's a foldable keyboard, and she uses a mini iPad. The iPad we use at home is the iPad Pro and a larger keyboard, but it's a little bit clunky to take out and about. So when we're out and about, we use the foldable keyboard. Now, the downside for that is that keyboard's a little smaller, so the targets are a little smaller for her fingers and eyes. And then the mini iPad is smaller too, but it works for her, and it's what we've found very successful, lightweight and out and about.
How do you safeguard authorship and avoid overprompting?
To me, staying true to spellers' words is the most critical part of the process. I try to stay strong when I am influenced and hold on fiercely to my thought.
And that's something I didn't necessarily understand early in her spelling journey, because all I wanted was for her to be open. And that happened, and it was a wonderful time. But then, and the reason that your question is so powerful, but then we have to make sure that we do exactly what you said, is to safeguard that authorship, make sure her words are truly her own, and avoid influence. And it's hard to avoid influence, because we're influencing each other all the time, all of us. We're finishing each other's sentences, and we're predicting other people's thoughts. We do it every day, all day. But it's really important not to do that, because when I do that, or I try to predict what she's going to say, it ends up influencing what she says. So I try to make sure that her words are 100% her own, and they always surprise me. And that's when I know, because she'll say words, she'll type words that I have to look up or Google, or that I know are words, but I'm not sure what the meaning is. And I wouldn't get any of that if I were influencing or trying to predict what she was going to say. So letting go of that influence, it's one of the trickier things, but it's very, very important. So I'm really glad you asked that question, and so is she.
How long did it take you to learn her thoughts, etc.?
So let's see. So there's sort of phases of open communication for her. When they're first spelling their first open thoughts, they're very small, broken things. They're not these, she didn't, sit down and break into poetry or song one day. So, but we were just happy that it was even a word or two. And that took several months just to get to where she could get a word or two out. And even that's unusual. So I would say it was at least a year and a half before she was able to really get robust thoughts out. And then she did start writing poetry, and she did start, writing some fictional pieces and wanting to delve into those sort of things too, which was amazing.
Is all typing for her like this?
Is all typing for her like this, meaning open?
Oh. Oh.
Always you.
Oh, no, that's a really good question too. It's a very important one. She is the most advanced with her provider and myself, Dawn Marie. She is still on the stencil board with her sister, and with her father, she's on the laminate. So for each communication partner, she has a different level of fluency depending on our level of experience with typing with her, how often we practice. So when she sits down with a different person, it's going to look very different. But I'm your primary communication partner, right, babe? Yeah.
Laura, is that annoying?
Is that annoying? Come here. Yeah, that's a good question. I was just explaining how with Monica you're on the stencil and you might be on the laminate with someone, and she was asking if that's annoying. Mm-hmm.
What makes it so different?
No, they need to follow the process.
She says it's not annoying because they need to follow the process. What is the primary difference that makes it so different, one person to another? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Their regulation.
Their regulation. I would say it's also part of practice and experience, but I didn't even know what co-regulation meant before spelling, and vastly underestimated the importance of it, of using your nervous system to co-regulate another person's nervous system, especially when that person has been self-described as high anxiety. She's told me that she spends the majority of her time in fight or flight mode, even though it doesn't look like there's any reason for that to be. It's just a steady state of high anxiety, which makes me feel so bad. But it means that I have to be even more regulated to sort of calm her body to the point where she's able to spell out her thoughts. So that's interesting that you say that. I was going to say their experience, which is also important, but the key is regulation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you try other treatment?
Does she try other treatments?
Anxiety.
Oh, for anxiety, yes. So when she was younger, we tried medications, we tried supplements. We didn't have success with those. I'm sure it differs from individual to individual, but we didn't have a lot of success with those. So now today she's not on any kind of prescription medication for anxiety. She does have some supplements that we based on some DNA testing we did for her. So that's been fairly effective, but the anxiety is always there to some level, to some degree, unfortunately.
Would you ever consider?
Absolutely. And because we've tried so many, I wouldn't say never to revisiting it at some point if we thought it was appropriate. But I also don't want to interfere with all the progress that she's made. So it's sort of a, if it's not broke, we're not going to fix it kind of situation where we've actually tried things for anxiety that made the anxiety worse.
What does growing independence look like for you?
Little things like getting my own bath and owning chores are giant steps to independence.
And she's, again, this is something she's taught me. She's my best teacher, because I would do things for her. And I figured out a few months into the process, I wasn't doing her any favors by doing that, because she wants that independence, even if it's only, hey, I'm going to do my own laundry, or hey, with a little bit of help, I'm going to do this instead of mom doing my laundry for me. So now she has things that she's responsible for around the house, and she needs prompting to do them. And she, she still needs that prompting. But she loves having the ownership of those small things that the rest of us take for granted. So she taught me that. And she loves that. She would love to live semi-autonomously at some point. And I said, if you're going to do that, we're going to have to work on that every day. And so we do.
How do you respond when someone questions the validity of the method?
I tell them to watch me in action.
And so it's hard to see this and not believe it when someone's actually typing out their thoughts.
Why is it questioned if it is similar to PECS?
That's a very good question, because with PECs and with AAC devices, there's prompt in the beginning, just like with spelling. But spelling gets, much more questions than things like PECs and AAC devices, because those prompts are used in the beginning. But the whole idea with any of these, PECs, AAC, spelling, is to fade those prompts, and so that the individual is able to do that on their own. There was also something called facilitated communication that got called into question back in the 1990s for too much influence. So I think some of that has lingered and carried over and spilled over. But hopefully we're winning more and more people's getting more credibility by the speller and by the year, so that this is an accepted practice all over.
What do people often confuse about spelling-based approaches?
They think that lost communication can never be found, but ask any non-speaker, and they will tell you it was never lost to begin with.
Yeah, she was always in there, as they say. We just didn't know it.
I prefer the word nonverbal because I use nonverbal communication.
Yes, and Laura has expressed her preference for the word non-speaking, but she's also expressed a very strong opinion that it should be up to the person, the language they use to describe themselves, and that it's a very individual choice.
Why?
You want to come and answer that? Why you prefer non-speaking? Or sometimes minimally speaking, but the difference between, because Kayla was saying she refers to herself as nonverbal because she, go ahead.
I prefer the word nonverbal because I use nonverbal communication.
Because she uses nonverbal communication.
Speech is not my primary mode of communication, so I prefer non-speaking.
Yeah, but like I said, she's made it very clear that the person, it's sort of like the debate between autistic versus a person with autism. It should be really, this is what she's told me, it should really be up to the person who is impacted how they describe themselves. Very free choice. Yeah. Any questions for Kayla? Go ahead. Okay.
How did you learn to communicate?
She wants to know how you learned to communicate.
How accurate is that typing?
Extremely accurate and extremely fast. So every once in a while she'll have a typo in backspace, but we practice a lot and she's very accurate.
I was immediately labeled nonverbal. The speech therapist introduced sign language to jumpstart my expressive communication. It was determined that finger spelling was easier physically for me and more universal to teach others. I later learned how to communicate with the world through an augmentative and alternative communication device. To match me with a reliable voice, I had an AAC evaluation. This assessment helped my team determine methods, devices, techniques, symbols, and/or strategies to represent and/or augment my spoken and/or written language. Initially, I had a communication device called Dynavox. It had pre-programmed grids filled with picture vocabulary, buttons to formulate sentences together, and a keyboard with word prediction. Perfect, right? No. While it taught me the value of technology, voice-activated communication, and more diversity in my vocabulary, I experienced a lot of intense feelings towards my big, bulky, and expensive Dynavox. My biggest complaint was that it constantly kept freezing, especially when I had something important to say. Many repairs were constantly necessary for this dinosaur, and let's definitely not underestimate the stress without a concrete visual audio system in place. In high school, it was suggested that I bring in my 9.4-inch iPad. Lo and behold, I finally found a reliable communication application called Proloquo2Go. I actually prefer not to utilize the pre-programmed grids that automatically are provided on Proloquo2Go. I find that it is too limiting and reminds me of the dinosaur I had. However, I take advantage of pre-programming my own thoughts for any presentations, interviews, and/or conversations I participate in. After graduation, I had another AAC evaluation where I switched to the device that I still have now, a 12.9-inch iPad Pro.
That's an amazing journey you've had. Amazing. And a lot of great helping evaluations along the way. And I'm so happy that you found one that worked for you. I was just trying to picture you with your Dynavox freezing when you had something important to say and how frustrating that is. So I'm so happy. And we had some luck with Proloquo2Go too, but she was very similar to you in that the pre-programmed buttons were too limiting. So I think it's so much better to hear your thoughts and her thoughts in the sort of robust format that you're able to use now. But I love the idea of pre-programming some things. It makes you much more efficient, especially if you're like Laura and yourself and you want to advocate and you have certain facts that you can pre-program. I love that idea, so I think we're going to steal it from you. For anybody out there who has some combination of PECs and sign language and AAC devices, I say whatever works for that individual, they should follow that plan for themselves. But right now, the typing kind of fits all of her needs. Hey, thank you so much for having us on and getting the word out and doing what you do. I think you're an amazing young woman to be doing what you're doing, and we appreciate you. Come here, Laura.
Thanks, Kayla. You are inspiring.
She is inspiring. Yeah, you're an inspiration to and a role model, so we appreciate that.
B.
Right back at you.
Oh, right back at you, she said. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep up the fight on our end too.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having
Yeah,
us. It was lovely to meet you. And if you have any questions, just reach out and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye for now.